The ringtone ripped me awake at exactly 1:17 a.m. I fumbled for my phone, barely able to see the screen. It was Mom. I answered immediately. "Helen," she whispered. Her voice was so quiet, I almost thought the call was breaking up. "Mom, what's wrong?" "Don't ask questions, listen to me." I heard her breathing hard as if she were hiding. "Take your brother and go right now." My heart started pounding. "What happened?" "Don't let your father see you." A loud thud echoed somewhere behind her. She gasped. "Helen, you have maybe 2 minutes." Then the line went dead. I sat frozen for 1 second. Only one. Downstairs I heard the front door open. Heavy footsteps. Dad. He wasn't supposed to be home until morning. Every instinct told me something was terribly wrong. I slipped out of bed, crossed the hallway, and gently shook my 12-year-old brother awake. "Evan," I whispered, "get up quietly." He rubbed his eyes. "What is it?" "We're leaving." He looked confused, but something in my face stopped him from asking questions. We grabbed our wallets, my car keys, and our phones, nothing else. I eased open the back door, while the sound of Dad moving through the kitchen drifted across the house. Every creak of the floorboards made me stop breathing. We slipped into my car without turning on the interior lights. The engine started. I backed slowly down the driveway. Only when we turned the corner did I finally press the accelerator. Neither of us spoke. The silence felt heavier than the darkness surrounding us. About 10 minutes into the drive, Evan looked down at his phone. "Helen." "What?" "Dad called me." "Don't answer." "He called 6 times. My own phone lit up. "Dad." I let it ring until it stopped. A second later it rang again. "Dad." Again I ignored it. The road ahead was empty, stretching through the darkness while questions crowded my mind. Had my parents argued? Had someone broken into the house? Why had Mom sounded terrified? None of it made sense. Dad was a police lieutenant. People trusted him. Our neighbors respected him. Growing up, everyone told me how lucky I was to have a father who protected the community. Whenever Mom accused him of lying or manipulating people, Dad would sigh patiently and tell me, "Your mother's imagination gets away from her sometimes." Eventually, I believed him. Everyone else did. Mom became the difficult one. The emotional one. The woman who always seemed afraid of something no one else could see. Even after I moved into my own apartment, she still called occasionally just to ask if Evan was okay. She never asked about herself. Always him. Now I couldn't stop replaying the fear in her voice. She hadn't sounded emotional. She'd sounded hunted. 20 minutes after we left home, my phone rang again. "Dad." I rejected the call. Almost immediately another call appeared. Unknown number. I hesitated. Then it stopped before I could answer. A notification appeared. New voicemail. I pulled into the parking lot of a closed grocery store and stared at the screen. Evan looked over at me. "Are you going to play it?" I swallowed hard and pressed the speaker icon. For a second there was only static. Then Mom's trembling voice filled the car. "If you're hearing this." At the empty grocery store parking lot, neither of us moved. The voicemail crackled with static. "If you're hearing this," Mom whispered. A scraping sound interrupted her. Then her breathing grew faster. "Don't let him." The message ended. Just like that. I stared at the screen. "That's it?" Evan asked quietly. I played it again. The same few words. The same interruption. Nothing else. It wasn't enough to explain anything, but it was enough to convince me that whatever had happened in our house hadn't been an ordinary argument. I put the car in drive. "We're leaving town." Evan hesitated. Helen, what? I think Mom wanted me to keep something. I glanced over. What do you mean? He pulled his backpack into his lap. Before bed, she came into my room. I looked at him. She hugged me really tight. His voice became smaller. She said if anything happened tonight, I wasn't allowed to let Dad have my backpack. I slowed the car. What exactly did she say? No matter what your father says, don't give him this bag. He looked down. I thought she was just upset. I pulled into a brightly lit gas station that was still open around the clock. A few truck drivers stood near the pumps, completely unaware that my entire world had just turned upside down. Inside the parked car, I unzipped Evan's backpack. Books, homework, a half-finished science project, a pencil case, a lunch container. Nothing unusual. I searched every pocket. Nothing. Evan frowned. I don't know where she put it. I checked again, feeling every seam with my fingers. Still nothing. Whatever Mom wanted us to protect wasn't obvious. I leaned back in my seat, frustrated. Memories I hadn't thought about in years suddenly came rushing back. Mom telling me quietly, not everything your father says is true. Dad smiling patiently. Helen, your mother's under a lot of stress. Teachers admired him. Neighbors waved when he drove by. The officers at community events treated him like a hero. Whenever Mom tried to challenge him, she somehow ended up looking irrational while he stayed calm. I always believed calm meant honest. Now I wasn't so sure. My phone buzzed again. Then again. Then again. Text after text from Dad. Helen, your mother is having another episode. Bring Evan home. She took you without thinking clearly. I'm trying to protect both of you. Another message followed almost instantly. You know me better than anyone. I locked the screen without replying. Evan looked out the windshield. What if Dad's telling the truth? The question hit harder than I expected. For 22 years, trusting Dad had been automatic. Now every memory felt uncertain. I took a slow breath. We're not going home. Where are we going? Somewhere Dad won't think to look. I started the engine again. As we pulled back onto the highway, my phone vibrated one more time. This time it wasn't Dad. It was Mom. Just one text. Whatever he tells you, don't go to the police. The motel parking lot was nearly empty when I pulled in just before dawn. I paid for a room with my debit card. Hopping a few hours behind a locked door would give me time to think. It was a mistake. Less than 30 minutes after we stepped inside, flashing red and blue lights reflected through the curtains. My stomach dropped. 3 police cruisers pulled into the parking lot. A firm knock echoed through the room. Police Department, Ms. Helen Carter, we need to speak with you. Evan looked at me with wide eyes. They found us. I slowly opened the door but kept the security latch engaged. A uniformed officer stood outside with 2 others behind him. Ma'am, he said calmly, your father has reported your brother as an endangered missing child. My father? Yes. He knows we're safe. The officer's expression didn't change. He informed us your mother suffered a psychological episode and took both of you without permission. I felt the room tilt beneath me. Those were almost the exact words from Dad's text messages. The officer continued, we're here to make sure your brother is returned safely. Before I could answer, several motel guests stepped outside to watch. The manager folded his arms near the office door. Whispers spread across the parking lot. Is that the missing kid? I heard the mother snapped. Every eye seemed fixed on us. I realized something terrifying. Dad hadn't just reported us. He had controlled the story before we ever had a chance to speak. One officer glanced at Evan. "Son, would you come with us?" Evan instinctively stepped behind me. "No," I said. "I'm his sister. We understand." His voice remained polite. "But your father is a police lieutenant. We have every reason to believe his report is accurate." I looked from one officer to another. Most seemed convinced, but one of them barely met my eyes. He looked uncomfortable, almost guilty. While everyone focused on me, Evan nervously clutched his backpack. The zipper snagged. He tugged harder. A small inner panel folded open. Neither of us had ever noticed it before. A wrapped object slipped halfway out. I reached for it before anyone else saw. It was a tiny flash drive, wrapped inside one of Evan's old math worksheets. My pulse quickened. Without hesitation, I slid it into my jacket pocket and zipped the backpack closed. No one outside appeared to notice. The uncomfortable officer stepped closer, as if preparing to take Evan. Instead, he lowered his voice so only I could hear. "Don't argue." I stared at him. He continued without looking directly at me. "Walk toward the vending machines." "What? Now?" Confused, I slowly backed away with Evan. The officer followed just long enough to whisper one more sentence. "Not everyone at the department works for your father." Before I could ask what he meant, another officer called his name. He immediately raised his voice. "Check around the back of the building." It sounded like an order to his team. Instead, it created an opening. I grabbed Evan's hand. "Run." We sprinted around the rear of the motel, climbed over a low fence, and disappeared into the alley behind the property before anyone realized we were gone. 10 minutes later, breathing hard inside a small public library that had just opened for the morning, I borrowed one of the public computers. I looked at the flash drive in my hand. "This better explain everything," I whispered. I plugged it into the computer. Several folders appeared on the screen. One was labeled only with a date. Another read insurance. Then a video file caught my attention. I clicked it. The screen flickered. The image sharpened. My father looked directly into the camera. The video began without sound. My father stood beside a patrol car in the glow of flashing emergency lights. A few seconds later, the audio kicked in. "That's not what goes in the report." Another officer nodded. The camera shifted, as if whoever recorded it had hidden the device inside a jacket pocket. Someone off-screen asked, "What about the witness?" Dad answered without hesitation. "The witness didn't see enough to matter." The recording ended. I clicked another file. This one contained scanned police reports. Every page carried official department letterheads. Names had been blacked out, but the dates matched the video. Then I found body camera footage. The timestamp showed it had been recorded years earlier. The footage captured the aftermath of what had officially been ruled an accidental death. But what I watched didn't match the written reports at all. Officers discussed changing timelines. Evidence disappeared between camera cuts. And my father calmly directed everyone involved. "Stick to the original statement," he said. "No one benefits from reopening this." I leaned back from the monitor. My hands had gone cold. Mom hadn't been imagining things. She'd been collecting proof. For years. "Helen." Evan's voice pulled me back. "What is it? Is Dad in trouble?" I looked at him. "I think he's been in trouble for a long time." Before I could open another folder, my phone buzzed. A notification appeared from the vehicle app Dad had insisted we install years ago for emergencies. Vehicle location updated. He was tracking my car. I stood so quickly my chair rolled backward. "We have to go." Outside the library, I found the small GPS module tucked beneath the dashboard, where Dad had once proudly shown me its location. "This is how he keeps finding us," I muttered. Using a screwdriver from the library maintenance desk that an employee lent me after I claimed the panel was loose, I removed the tracker. I dropped it into a trash truck that was pulling away from the curb. "If he's following the signal," I said, "he'll be chasing garbage." We left the car in the library parking lot. A familiar patrol vehicle quietly pulled alongside us. The same officer from the motel rolled down his window. "Get in." I hesitated. "You told us to run." "I also told you not everyone is with your father." After a long pause, I opened the rear door. He drove several blocks before speaking again. "My name's Officer Reyes." "You believe us?" I asked. "I believe the department has been asking questions for years." He glanced at me in the mirror. "Internal Affairs has suspected your father and a few others of manipulating investigations. They've never had enough evidence." I pulled the flash drive from my pocket. "What if they have it now?" His expression hardened. "Then don't take it to your local precinct." "Why?" "Because I can't promise who's loyal to him." The answer matched Mom's warning exactly. Officer Reyes drove us to an unmarked government building instead of a police station. Inside, 2 internal affairs investigators carefully examined the files from the flash drive. One investigator looked up after nearly an hour. "The metadata is consistent." The other nodded. "This appears authentic." For the first time all night, I felt a small surge of hope. Then a television mounted on the wall caught everyone's attention. A live news conference had just begun. My father stood behind a podium wearing his police uniform. His voice was calm. "My wife has been suffering from severe emotional instability." He paused for the cameras. "My adult daughter has unfortunately been manipulated into helping her remove my son from our home." The news anchors repeated his statements as breaking news. Within minutes, social media feeds filled with comments calling my mother dangerous and me irresponsible. I watched strangers decide who I was without knowing any of us. One investigator muted the television. "The evidence is strong," she said. "But documents and recordings aren't enough by themselves." "What else do you need?" I asked. "A witness who can explain how these files were gathered." I already knew the answer before she finished. "My mother." The room fell silent. Another investigator received a phone call. He listened without speaking, then slowly stood. Everyone looked at him. Before any search for my mother could even begin, the office door opened. A staff member stepped inside and said 3 words. "She's here." The room went completely still. I turned toward the door just as my mother stepped inside. Her clothes were wrinkled, her hair was unkempt, and dark circles surrounded her eyes as if she hadn't slept in days. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she crossed the room and wrapped both Evan and me in a hug so tight it hurt. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I thought..." She pulled back, tears filling her eyes. "I didn't know if I'd make it here." One of the internal affairs investigators offered her a chair and a bottle of water. "When you're ready," he said, "we need you to tell us everything." She nodded. "It started years ago." The room became silent again. There was a fatal incident involving another officer. It should have been investigated honestly. She looked down at her hands. Instead, my husband helped rewrite what happened. She explained that she had accidentally overheard conversations she was never supposed to hear. At first she believed there had been a mistake. But every time she asked questions, more documents disappeared. Witnesses changed their stories. Reports were rewritten. Eventually, she realized it wasn't one mistake. It was a cover-up. I confronted him. Her voice trembled. He didn't deny it. I stared at her. He admitted it. He told me some truths were better buried. The investigators quietly took notes. When I refused to let it go, she continued, he stopped arguing with me. She gave a bitter smile. He did something much smarter. She looked directly at me. He convinced everyone I was unstable. My chest tightened. Friends stopped believing her. Neighbors avoided difficult conversations. Even relatives started telling her to get help. Every accusation she made only seemed to reinforce the image my father had carefully created. I realized nobody would believe me if I came forward without proof. So you started collecting it, one investigator said. She nodded. Every report I could safely copy. Every recording. Every document. When body camera files were scheduled for deletion, I secretly made copies. She looked at the flash drive lying on the table. Everything ended up there. I finally asked the question that had haunted me since 1:17 that morning. Why hide it in Evan's backpack? She looked at my little brother. Because your father searched everything that belonged to me. He searched my car, my closet, my office. He would never think I'd trust a 12-year-old with the evidence. Evan slowly looked down at his backpack. I didn't even know it was there. I know, Mom said softly. That's why it was safe. I swallowed. And the phone call. Her expression changed. Last night he found out. He discovered I'd been gathering evidence. I knew he would come home looking for it. She closed her eyes for a second. If he found that drive before I could get it out of the house, years of evidence would disappear. So you called me. You were the only person I knew would protect your brother. I lowered my head. I didn't protect you. You did exactly what I needed. The investigators began comparing her testimony with the files on the flash drive. Every timeline matched. Every recording fit the documents. Every missing piece connected. One by one, officers who had worked under my father were interviewed. Faced with overwhelming evidence, several admitted they had followed orders they knew were wrong. Others produced additional records they had quietly kept for years. The investigation moved quickly after that. Within days, warrants were issued. My father was escorted out of the police department in handcuffs by officers he had once supervised. Television cameras waited outside. The same reporters who had broadcast his accusations now reported on the corruption investigation. His badge was taken. His position was terminated. His pension was revoked, pending the outcome of the criminal proceedings. The image he had spent decades building collapsed in a matter of days. Watching the news felt surreal. This was the same man who had taught me how to ride a bike. The same man I defended every time Mom tried to warn me. I couldn't reconcile those memories with the evidence I had seen. One evening I apologized to Mom. I should have believed you. She reached across the table and took my hand. He made sure you couldn't. I don't blame you. Those words hurt more than if she had been angry. She had spent years fighting alone, while the rest of us unknowingly stood on the wrong side. As the legal process continued, the court granted me temporary guardianship of Evan, while Mom rebuilt her life without living in fear. For the first time in years, our home was quiet. Not because someone demanded silence, because we no longer feared what would happen if we spoke. Mom slowly regained the trust that had been stolen from her. Neighbors who had once avoided her apologized. Some meant it. Some didn't. She accepted neither revenge nor pity. She simply wanted the truth to exist where the lies had lived. I kept the voicemail saved on my phone. The recording still ended after those 3 unfinished words. If you're hearing this, it never explained everything. It didn't have to. Everything that followed finished the sentence. That night began with a single phone call and ended with the truth finally being impossible to hide.